How do you even begin to process this? How do you even begin to put words to the type of pain that Jey Uso is living through right now? Imagine standing outside your own home, watching everything you've worked for, everything you've loved, everything you've protected, turn to ash in front of your eyes. Imagine screaming at the top of your lungs, begging for one chance, just one opportunity to pull your child out of the flames, only to be held back because it's too late, because the fire already consumed what you can't replace. That is the nightmare that Jey Uso is living in right now. And the world of wrestling is shaken to its core. This isn't a storyline. This isn't a scripted promo. This isn't entertainment. This is raw reality, a heartbreaking tragedy that feels impossible to comprehend. Jey Uso, the man who has stood inside the ring and fought through wars with his brother, who has carried his family name with pride, who has stood in front of millions of fans with his hands raised in victory, tonight, he is broken. His house burned down. His child, gone forever in that fire. Let that sink in. A child, innocent, pure, full of life, ripped away in the most horrific way possible. And it happened in seconds. One spark, one flame, one uncontrolled blaze, and everything changed. Wrestling fans around the world are in shock, but the pain inside Jey's chest. It's indescribable. You can lose titles, you can lose matches, you can lose friends, but losing your own child, losing your own blood, your own flesh, in a fire that you couldn't stop. That's a wound that never heals. And here's the part that should make every single one of you watching this angry. Where was the help? Where were the people that we're supposed to protect? How does a fire get so out of control that a child doesn't make it out alive? How do the alarms not save the day? How does a home filled with life turn into a graveyard of memories? Somebody failed Jey. Somebody failed his family. When Jey Uso was tearing down arenas with Roman Reigns, when he was fighting to stand as main event Jey Uso, we all saw the pride in his eyes. He would always talk about family. He would always say he fights for his bloodline, for his children, for the ones who call him daddy when he walks through the door. And now, that door doesn't exist anymore. That child doesn't exist anymore. Jey isn't walking into his house tonight. He's standing in the ashes of it. And this hits different because we know Jey Uso isn't just a wrestler. He's a father. He's a man who wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's been vulnerable in the ring before. He's cried in front of the world when the bloodline tore his heart apart. But those tears, those were nothing compared to the ones streaming down his face right now. The fire didn't just take his home. It didn't just take his child. It took his future memories. It took birthdays, it took hugs, it took laughter, it took late night talks, it took graduation caps, it took weddings, it stole everything that could have been. And Jey is left with silence. He's left with the smell of smoke. He's left with guilt, even though it's not his fault. Because that's what parents do, they blame themselves. Even when it's out of their hands. Even when there was nothing they could have done. Do you understand how cruel this is? Do you understand how unfair this is? We cheer for Jey Uso every week because he entertains us. But outside the ring, he's just a man trying to live, trying to raise his kids, trying to be the father he maybe wished he had more of growing up. And life didn't just hit him, it destroyed him. And I want every single one of you listening to stop for a second and imagine this being your family. Imagine this being your child. Imagine watching the flames dance on the walls of your home while your heart is being ripped out of your chest because you can't save the one person who calls you Dad. That is not just pain. That is torture. That is hell on earth. And Jey Uso is living in it right now. And where does he go from here? Does he step back into the ring and pretend like nothing happened? Does WWE push forward with storylines like his life isn't in shambles? Or does the entire wrestling world stop and realize that this man doesn't just need a cheer, he doesn't just need applause. He needs support, he needs love, he needs people to stand by him the way he stood by us inside that ring. But let's not lie, some people will move on. Some people will treat this like just another headline. Some people will shrug and keep scrolling because tragedy has become entertainment to the heartless. And that's what makes me sick. That's what makes me angry. A child's life was taken, and if we don't stop, if we don't acknowledge, if we don't scream out our support for Jey Uso, then we are part of the problem. You think wrestling feuds are emotional? You think betrayal in the bloodline was heartbreaking? No. This is heartbreak. This is real. This is a man with tears staining his face, with a voice too broken to even speak, with fists that can't swing because all his strength is gone. And here's where the rage kicks in. Because if you're not furious, then you're not human. How in the world do we live in a society with technology, alarms, firefighters, all these so-called safety measures, and yet Jey Uso, a father who has given everything to his career, still loses his child in a house fire? How is this possible? Someone has to answer for this. Someone has to carry the blame. You can tell me it's an accident. You can tell me that tragedies happen every day. But this wasn't just an accident. This was failure. Failure of a system. Failure of protection. Failure of whoever was supposed to keep that family safe. And now what? We just move on like this was inevitable. No. Not this time. Not when a child's laughter was silenced forever. Look at Jey Uso. This man grew up fighting for respect, fighting for recognition, fighting for his family name. He and Jimmy started from nothing, grinding their way through the tag division, battling injury, betrayal, humiliation, all for the sake of their family. They never stopped repeating it. We do this for our bloodline. But right now, the bloodline isn't in the ring. The bloodline is lying in ashes. And all the victories, all the championships, all the big matches at WrestleMania, they mean absolutely nothing in the face of this. And let's talk about WWE for a second. What do they do now? Do they exploit this tragedy for storylines? Do they plaster Jey's tears across social media for clicks? Or do they finally act like a family the way they always preach about? Because Jey doesn't need a storyline right now. He doesn't need kayfabe. He doesn't need Roman Reigns stepping into the ring with him to cut a promo. He needs silence. He needs prayers. He needs time to bury a child. But you know the sad part. Some fans won't let him. Some fans will chant, "Main event Jey Uso," when he comes back. They'll cheer, they'll boo, they'll throw signs in the air, and they won't stop to realize that behind the performance, behind the character, behind the music and pyro, there's a man whose heart was burned alive with his child. And you know what's cruel? Jey will blame himself. He'll replay that night 1,000 times in his head. What if he had come home earlier? What if he had checked the smoke detectors that week? What if he had rushed in faster? What if he had pulled harder? These thoughts will haunt him. That's the twisted game tragedy plays. It convinces you that you could have done something even when you couldn't. And that guilt will sit in his chest like fire, long after the real flames are gone. But let's zoom out. Because this isn't just about Jey Uso. This is about the entire wrestling family. You think Jimmy Uso is sleeping tonight. You think Roman Reigns, who calls himself the tribal chief, isn't broken right now knowing one of his own is living through hell. You think Rikishi, the father of the Usos, isn't crushed, realizing that his grandson is gone forever. This is generational pain. The entire Anoa'i family, a dynasty in wrestling, is grieving. A family that has entertained the world for decades, that has put their bodies on the line for fans, now sits in mourning. And here's something that makes the whole situation cut even deeper. This happened to Jey Uso at a time when his career was at a peak. He was breaking out on his own. He was proving he wasn't just Jimmy's twin, wasn't just Roman's sidekick, he was his own man, carving his legacy. And just when his star was shining the brightest, life came with a storm and put out the flame. Now, wrestling feels meaningless to him. Because when you bury your child, there's no championship, no spotlight, no main event that fills that hole. And don't think for one second that this doesn't shake the locker room too. WWE superstars live like they're untouchable. They travel city to city, arena to arena, acting larger than life. But tonight, every one of them is reminded that life is fragile. That the fire doesn't care about fame. That tragedy doesn't skip you just because you've got a contract with the biggest wrestling company in the world. And you better believe the entire locker room is walking around in silence right now, trying to process how one of their brothers is facing the darkest night of his life. What about the fans? The people watching this, the ones who chant, "You see," every week, the ones who put up their ones for the bloodline, the ones who scream at the top of their lungs when Jey Uso walks out. You are not just an audience anymore. You are witnesses to a tragedy. And you have a choice. You can scroll past it. You can watch it like drama. Or you can actually do something. Flood Jey with love. Show him his child didn't die unnoticed. Show him he doesn't stand in those ashes alone. And this is why I'm angry. Because too many people won't. Too many people will move on to the next headline, the next story, the next match. But if you're hearing this, if you're watching this, if you're a fan of wrestling or even just a human being with a heart, don't you dare look away. Because if you've ever cheered for Jey Uso, if you've ever felt his pain when Roman crushed him, if you've ever screamed for him in the ring, then now is the time to prove it wasn't just noise. Now is the time to stand with him when it actually matters. The fire is gone. The house is gone. The child is gone. But Jey Uso is still here. Broken. Shattered. But alive. And maybe, just maybe, the only thing holding him together right now is knowing that somewhere, someone cares. That somewhere, someone is as angry as he is. That somewhere, someone refuses to let this child's death fade into silence. So let me say this loud. Shame on the system that failed him. Shame on the people who let this happen. And shame on anyone who thinks this is just another headline. Because this is more than a headline. This is a wound carved into the heart of a father, a family, and an entire wrestling community. The ripple effect of this tragedy is bigger than anyone can measure right now. Because when Jey Uso's house burned to the ground, when his child's life was stolen by flames, it wasn't just Jey who lost something. The entire Noah family lost. The wrestling business lost. Every fan who has ever raised one in the air for the bloodline lost. And that's what makes this so much harder to process. Think about Jimmy Uso for a second. His twin, his brother, the man who has walked step for step with Jey his entire life. When one breathes, the other breathes. When one falls, the other falls. And right now, Jimmy isn't just grieving for his nephew, he's grieving for his brother. He's watching Jey crumble, and the one thing Jimmy can't do is fix it. He can't fight this fight for him. He can't tag in. He can't superkick the flames away. He has to sit there, helpless, and watch his brother live in agony. And for twins like the Usos, that's almost unbearable. And then there's Roman Reigns, the self-proclaimed tribal chief, the leader of the bloodline. For years, he's told us that family comes first. That blood is everything. But now Roman has to step out of the character, out of the spotlight, and realize that this is bigger than wrestling. Roman Reigns, the man who has conquered cancer twice, knows pain, knows struggle, knows loss. And now, he has to find a way to stand beside Jey in the darkest valley of his life. Forget titles, forget storylines, this is about brotherhood. And if Roman is truly the head of the table, then now is the moment to prove it by carrying Jey when he can't walk on his own. And Rikishi, the father, the man who raised the Usos, who brought them into this business, who has watched his boys turn into superstars. Tonight, Rikishi isn't a legend. He isn't a WWE Hall of Famer. He's a grandfather mourning the loss of his grandchild. Imagine the weight of that. Having to console your son, while also burying your grandson. Having to be strong for your blood, when you feel like your own soul has been ripped out. The Noah family has been through battles inside the ring, but nothing could prepare them for this war outside of it. And the pain doesn't stop at family. The locker room is shaken. Reports are already flooding in that WWE stars are struggling to even process the news. People who've shared car rides with Jey, people who've wrestled him night after night, people who've laughed with him backstage, they're walking around numb. Because they know that could have been any of them. They know they'll see Jey again, but he'll never be the same. His eyes won't carry the same fire. His smile won't hit the same way. The man who made fans chant, UCEY, is broken. And outside WWE, the reaction is global. AEW stars, NJPW wrestlers, indie wrestlers from across the world, everybody is sending love. Because rivalries don't exist when tragedy strikes. The wrestling world is one big dysfunctional family, but in moments like this, they unite. Hashtags are already trending worldwide. Fans are posting pictures of Jey and his child, leaving messages of support. Some are angry, some are heartbroken, some are just stunned into silence. But all of them know, this loss is too big to ignore. And here's what makes this even worse, the imagery. A house fire. Flames dancing on the roof. Black smoke filling the air. Sirens screaming in the distance. Neighbors standing outside, watching, powerless. Jey Uso, a man who has stood across from legends like John Cena, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, reduced to a father pounding his fists on the ground, begging for just one more second with his child. That image will haunt not just him, but every fan who hears this story. And let's not pretend this doesn't raise questions. Where was WWE when this happened? Where was the so-called family, when Jey's actual family was being destroyed? Did they send flowers? Did they post a tweet? Did they pause the show in his honor? Or did they keep the cameras rolling, pretending the show must go on? Because sometimes, wrestling hides behind the phrase, the business never stops. But this is when the business should stop. This is when the lights should dim. This is when respect should come before profit. And what about us, the fans? What do we do with this information? Do we post about it and move on? Or do we actually hold on to this pain long enough to stand in solidarity with Jey? Because this isn't entertainment anymore. This isn't gossip. This is the raw truth of life. No one is untouchable. And if we don't let this tragedy break through the noise, then we've failed not just Jey, but his child. And I know what some people will say. Wrestlers sign up for this kind of life. They know the risks of being on the road. Stop. Stop right there. Nobody signs up for their child to die. Nobody signs up to bury their baby. Jey Uso didn't put on his boots that morning expecting to come home to ashes. This wasn't part of the deal. This was life's cruelest twist, and no one deserves it. And that's what burns me the most. There's no justice here. If this were a storyline, Jey could fight back. He could cut a promo. challenge someone to a match, get his revenge inside the ring. But this isn't kayfabe. You can't pin a fire. You can't superkick smoke. You can't fight death. This is the one opponent Jey can't defeat. But maybe, just maybe, he doesn't have to fight it alone. Maybe this is when the fans, the wrestlers, the family, everyone, rallies around him. Maybe this is when the world proves that even in the darkest of nights, a single spark of love can shine through. And maybe that's the only thing that keeps Jey standing when everything else around him has fallen. Because right now, Jey Uso isn't main event. He isn't, you see, he isn't even a WWE superstar. He's just a father with empty arms. And that reality should hit every single one of you as hard as it hits him. Let's stop pretending this is just a tragedy we can put into words. Because the truth is, there are no words strong enough to capture what Jey Uso is living through right now. None. The dictionary doesn't have a definition for this type of pain. It's beyond loss. It's beyond heartbreak. It's the kind of suffering that splits your soul in half and leaves you walking through life as a shadow of the person you used to be. And yet, here's the cruelest part. The world keeps moving. The earth spins, people go to work, the shows go on, and headlines fade. But for Jey Uso, time stopped the moment those flames swallowed his child. For him, the world ended right there. And while the rest of us keep moving, he'll be stuck in that moment for the rest of his life. That's the part most people don't understand about tragedy. It doesn't just happen once. It happens every day afterward, every time he wakes up and remembers, every time he closes his eyes and sees fire where laughter used to be. And I'm telling you right now, that should make you angry. Angry at the fire. Angry at the system. Angry at the randomness of life that would dare take a child away from a father who gave everything to protect his family. Angry that we live in a world where a man can conquer the biggest stages of wrestling but can't protect the one thing that mattered most. If you don't feel rage burning inside you hearing this, then you're not paying attention. Because this isn't just a sad story. This is a wake-up call. This is life showing its ugliest face, reminding us that it doesn't matter how famous you are, how strong you are, how many championships you've won. When tragedy comes knocking, none of that protects you. And tonight, Jey Uso is the proof. He stood in front of Roman Reigns, he stood in front of John Cena, he stood in front of the world. But he couldn't stand in front of fire. And here's where we, the fans, need to stop being passive. Don't just listen to this. Don't just watch this video and then go back to scrolling. Comment, share, let your voice be heard. Because Jey Uso doesn't need silence. He doesn't need pity. He needs an army of people reminding him that he isn't walking through this hell alone. He needs to see the world rally behind him and scream louder than the fire that tried to destroy him. Imagine him sitting in the quiet tonight. The house is gone. His child is gone. The laughter is gone. The silence is deafening. And maybe, just maybe, he picks up his phone, scrolling through messages, through posts, through videos like this one. And in that silence, he sees the comments. He sees the love. He sees that his child mattered. He sees that people care. And for just 1 second, he doesn't feel alone. That second might be the only thing that keeps him breathing. That's how much your voice matters right now. And let's not sugarcoat this. Jey will never be the same. He will never look at life the same. He will never walk into a ring the same. That fire didn't just take his child. It took a part of him, permanently. But what's left of him? That's up to us. That's up to his family. That's up to his brothers in the ring. That's up to his fans. Because maybe, just maybe, if we all stand together, we can help him find the strength to keep living, even when he doesn't want to. Don't get it twisted. This isn't about wrestling anymore. This is about humanity. This is about a man who has given us entertainment, passion, emotion, and years of his life, now needing us more than ever. This is about a child who should still be here but isn't. This is about not letting that child's memory fade into ash. So here's what I'm asking. Comment. Share. Flood the world with Jey's name. Flood the world with love. Don't let the silence win. Don't let this tragedy fade into just another story. Make it matter. Because that's all we can do now. Make it matter. And for those of you who think this is too much, that this is too heavy, that this is too raw, good. It should be. It should break you. It should shake you. Because if a child's death doesn't move you to tears, to rage, to action, then what does? If Jey Uso's pain doesn't hit you in the chest like a hammer, then you're not human. This isn't just Jey's tragedy. This is our tragedy. This is the wrestling world's tragedy. This is humanity's tragedy. And if we don't carry this together, Jey will be forced to carry it alone, and no man should ever have to carry something like this alone. So remember this moment. Remember this story. Don't just let it pass. Don't just treat it like another video on your feed. Let it stay with you. Let it remind you that life is fragile, that family is everything, and that sometimes, the strongest people in the world are broken in ways you'll never understand. Because Jey Uso, the man we've all cheered for, the man we've all laughed with, the man we've all cried with, has been brought to his knees by life itself. And the only question left is, will we stand him back up, or will we let him fall?